Hi everyone, so I am doing my end of the month reading wrap up. So the first one I'll talk about is Meet Me Halfway by Lillian T. James. Now this one here, unfortunately I gave it a 3. It was decent, but there were certain things that kind of like dragged for me and I had to like lower my rating. So we have the characters are Madison and Garrett. I gave this like a 2 out of 5 for the spice rating. So it's about a 3.5 stars. You have to kind of mark it 3. You can't really give like half stars, when it comes to Goodreads. So it's about a 3.5. So the things that worked for me, I would say I enjoyed the first half of this book. I love seeing Madison's relationship with her 8-year-old son, Jamie. Now, Madison moves into this area of town. She wants to be close to her parents. And she works multiple jobs in order to provide for her son. She ended up having her son at 16 years old. And so she's had obviously help from her parents helping her out. And she has a friend who helps her out. But she also wants to be able to obviously be independent and do things on her own. And the man who impregnated her didn't stick around, was a complete jerk, and doesn't pay her child support. So she's basically on her own. So she ends up moving into this duplex. And right next door in the duplex is this guy named Garrett, who is a bit of a grump and kind of a jerk and, doesn't really do well with like treating her well, like, when they first like meet and stuff like that. He has assumptions about her that he ends up like realizing he made a mistake in those assumptions. So this is basically their story. So I'd say I love the relationship with her son Jamie. She had a really great relationship with him, knew how to communicate well with him and all of that stuff. The second thing I liked about the story is I loved seeing how hardworking and determined she was to make sure her son got a good education by working 4 jobs, putting her son in a private school and also doing online classes as well. Now, the area they lived in, there was a school that wasn't a very good school. It didn't get good ratings, and you always need to research the schools that are in your general area. If it's a crappy school, you obviously don't want your kid going there. You want your kid to have a good education. So this is why she decided to put him in like a religious private school. Even though she says she's not a religious person, she still put him in the school because she figured he'd get a better education there than he would in the public school. So it all depends on the city, and they have the funding and all that stuff to really dedicate to a good school system. Like the city I live in, it's pricey to live here. It is. I'm in California. It is pricey to live here. It all depends on the area you live, but it is really expensive to live in California. And so I live in a city that has a good rated school system. And this is the whole purpose of me wanting to go to this school system, because I am in a major city that is the county, and the county's school system is a bad school system. It's a terrible school system. I don't think they do well, with teaching the children, and I just did not want to have, especially my autistic child, be put in the county school system. So even though we are in a county of Los Angeles, because it's not towns, because we're so big, they're cities. So there are different types of counties. You have like Kern County, you have LA County, there's Orange County, there's different counties of California. So I'm in one of them. And so I didn't want my child to go to a shitty school, especially with her being autistic. So I had said, like, we need to live in this part of like this city to have a good school system. So this is why my husband and I live here. We would live somewhere cheaper if we could, but right now with my daughters going to school, I want them to have the best education that they can have, and as much as I can, help them with that. So I understand why she, was the way she was. I also love the fact that Madison's first priority was her son and what was best for him. And I said her roommate was hilarious. I really liked her. I will definitely read book 2 in this series because I really did like her roommate. It's her best friend. Her best friend decided to move to the city where she's living in so that way she can help with babysitting Jamie while Madison goes to work and all that stuff. She also lacks a lot of sleep. Like every night she does not get a lot of sleep because besides her doing all of these jobs, and then she does stuff, jobs on the weekend. Besides her doing all of these jobs, she's also going and doing online schooling. And so she's trying to study at night. And so of course, when you have to get up at like early in the morning to get to work, you don't really get a lot of sleep. So she really is lacking a lot of sleep and is dealing with like a lot of stress for a single mom. So the things that didn't work for me, I felt like this woman was a loser magnet. So I said, besides her having her son at 16 to this loser who was too possessive of her and started to become a jerk, but she also had an ex-husband after her relationship with the first loser. Her husband became violent and would hit her. And I said, then when she was working for one of her jobs, the one guy who worked there was sexually harassing her and almost sexually assaulted her. Like he started like kissing her and like forcing himself on her and all that stuff. And that is in a sense like a sexual assault in a way, but he didn't get to the point of like penetration, things like that. So she basically froze and he stopped because obviously he gets off with like either he gets off with her finally giving in, or he gets off with maybe her enjoying it. His thing was like, he thought she was playing hard to get. And it's like, dude, when she says no, if she looks like she's not interested, do not fucking go forward. Do not go forward, man. Because if a woman doesn't look interested, she's not playing hard to get. Stop with this hard to get thing. I hate that mentality. If there are women out there who do that, stop doing that. You're confusing men. Do not go and play hard to get. Oh, I want this guy to chase me. No. You be honest with this man and you tell him whether or not you're interested in him. If you're not interested in with him, tell him. Say, I'm not interested in you. I'm sorry. If you got the wrong idea about me, I am not interested. But there are women out there who do that. And so guys think in their head, there's some men who think in their head like, oh, well, she's just playing hard to get. It's other women out there who ruin it for the rest of us. Do not do that. I hate that. I hate that. I will be honest with a guy and I will tell him, look, you're a really nice guy. I'm not interested in you that way. I could be your friend, but that's it, And there's some guys out there who will think like, oh, we'll be friends. And then they think they can try to hook up with me. So I'm like, I can't be friends with men. Because I'm like, I could be a friend with somebody and not be sexually attracted to them. But there's a lot of guys out there who are like, oh, I can do that too. But eventually they're kind of like hoping that I'll like break down and, go on a date with them. So that's why I just can't be friends with guys. I would like to because I'm really chill with dudes because, I could talk to them on their level, where a lot of women, it's all about feelings and all this other stuff and everything. And it just kind of gets like, women always gossip and everything. And sometimes I just want to talk to a dude, it's easier. But there are a lot of guys out there where it's like, they think that because you're talking to them that you're interested in them. And I'm like, no, I just want to have a conversation, man. That's it, I'm not interested in anything else. I don't want to touch your peepees. So yeah, some guys just can't take the hint that you're not interested. And so some men out there will be forceful. And, to me, it's like there's like two types of like men who sexually assault. There's ones who are interested in the power dynamic. They want to overpower a woman. It like gets them off that way. And then you also have the guys who are opportunistic assailants, predators that will wait for the opportunity for you to lower your guard. This is why I will say to women, don't go out drinking by yourself. Go with your friends. Make sure those friends are trustworthy and they're not going to leave you by yourself drunk so some dude can try to take advantage of you. Be smart. Be smart. So, to me, it's like, yes, some men shouldn't be that way, but we don't live in a fucking fantasy world. So you have to be safe and protect yourself. So, yeah. So there was that. And then I said she has to deal with her ex-husband continuously harass her. I said there was a scene in the book where there was banging on the door, and you would think that she would have been smart and said to herself, hey, this could be my ex. I probably shouldn't open the door. And she went and opened the door anyway, and her ex started to physically assault her. And if it wasn't for Garrett showing up, she'd probably be seriously injured or dead. So she really was dumb in that scene, and that really kind of lowered my opinion of her, because it's like, look, you have an ex that keeps stalking you, keeps harassing you, that was abusive towards you. Why would you open the door without knowing who was behind it? I'm sorry. Be safe. Have a peephole or something to where this person cannot just shove their way inside, I said, then she keeps being bothered by the fact that there's some like rich women who obviously have like money, and so they're letting their kids, go to this private school. And so this one is like really a bully. I'd say she's a queen bee, where she's like, oh, well, kind of like, we don't want your kind here. And it's like, look, if this lady's forking over how much money for her kid to be in this private school, you can go and kick rocks, lady, because she's doing her best to make sure her kids gets an education. You have money, so you have more of a privilege to offer more opportunities for your child because you have that money, So I definitely give respect to the people that maybe they grew up poor and they want to do better for their children, so they work their ass off to get to a good career to where they could put their kid into like a private school or have them do like secondary education, things like that. I give respect to those people because they came from nothing and they worked themselves up to something, to where you have like people who are privileged. They've always been privileged. If somebody goes and like they're self-made and they became rich, awesome, good for them. They worked hard to get where they're at. But there are some people who were born into privilege who have no idea what it's like to be a person who works a minimum wage job, who works a regular job. They don't know what that's like, and there's some people who love to virtue signal and act like they care about the poorer people, but they really don't. So for me, I get irritated when I see people like that in books, because I'm like, lady, you have privilege. Shut the fuck up. No one wants to hear your opinion. Just pay for your child's school, let them go off to freaking, this high-end fucking college, and then they're going to go and get into a position of, CEO or whatever it is, because you know people to get you into that position. So shut up, So yeah, it just really irritates me, because you know what it is? It's wealthy people do not like competition. And when you have a person who is poor and they're trying to do better for themselves, they don't like that, because they didn't have to work hard to get the money that they had. They don't like the competition. That's why they'll give you a hard time. So I didn't like that she was letting the one queen bee get to her, because, oh man, if that was me in that situation, I would be up in that witch's face and she wouldn't like me at the end of that conversation, because I have a loud mouth and I don't care who I offend. You're offended? That's your problem, honey. Fuck off. So yeah, for me, I was like, girl, get a fucking backbone, because she's a little bitch. This one's a little bitch. So that irritated me. So the relationship between Garrett and her was very slow going. He was an asshole for the majority of this book. And also, not knowing his POV and what he was thinking really kind of like messed with me, because I would have preferred if he had a POV. If he had that, it would have helped the story a little bit because I would have known what he was thinking. Most of the book, he was like, you're kind of an asshole. And I'm like, dude, why are you such a douche, you know? You could be nicer. You could be nicer to her, you know? Come on. And then, like, he started to have a POV more toward the ending. And I was like, now you tell me his, like, thoughts? Okay, lady. Okay. And so it was a very emotional and sad book at times. I said, just for the fact that she had such bad luck with men and her constantly working and being exhausted. I said, not being able to spend the amount of time she wanted to with her son. I said, when the hero and heroine finally get together, it's like toward the 85 to 90% mark, you know? And I said, so it wrapped up too soon and there wasn't a lot of building up with their relationship. I said, I would have liked to have seen that more. I said there is trigger warning for obviously sexual harassment in the workplace, domestic violence, stalking, things like that, you know. So that was my review for that book. Like I said, it was okay. It would have been better if she wasn't such a loser magnet and like the relationship was a little more developed. I would have enjoyed it more. You know, the first 50% I liked it and then it started to peter off and I was just like, ugh. I was getting frustrated. So the other book that I end up reading is Hoops Shorts. This is a Hoops novella collection. This is a part of the Hoops series that is for Kennedy Ryan that I really liked. I didn't like book 2 in the Hoops series, but I did like book 1 and book 3 the best. So this one here is characters of Decker and Avery. Decker was in Longshot, I think it's called. I think he was in Longshot with Austin. I think it was Austin. Was it Austin or August? I can't remember. It starts with an A. It's been a while since I read that book. So this one was okay, but trigger warning for there's talk of self-deletion of another character in this book. So this was more sad than happy, but I was glad that the characters finally got their HEA. Now, Avery and Decker met 10 years before, where he was a basketball player and she was a reporter for this one company, and he ends up accidentally flashing her the goods, and so they kind of get off on a wrong foot, and he's like extremely attracted to her, but things never like progressed after that. And then like 10 years go by where he's seen her like throughout the years, but like situations happened to where they weren't able to like, you know, get anywhere with each other. So he ended up getting married, and he wasn't married for that long. He ended up getting divorced, and he has a daughter with his ex-wife. And for her, she was engaged to a man who had a lot of mental health issues. And he dealt with like depression. I'd say the man was probably bipolar, because you can go from like extreme highs to extreme lows when it comes to bipolar disorder. And so I think that's probably what Avery's fiance probably had. And he was dealing with, he obviously had episodes of manic depression where he would get really suicidal. And so she tried to help him. And she very much dealt with, I would say, survivor's guilt, could be, because, you know, she survived, he had passed away, you know. She feels guilt because she couldn't help him. And then also she's probably dealing with like some type of like CPTSD that it's not like PTSD like soldiers deal with, but you can have CPTSD, where it's a situation where you end up seeing something that your brain cannot like fully process, and so you end up getting like nightmares from it. You can, you know, things like that. Like my grandfather years ago, before I was born, he ended up witnessing a car accident where one of the passengers ended up getting killed and had his head like severed off of his body, and he saw that in the street. And so for months it affected him where he'd get nightmares. That I'd say is probably a form of like CPTSD. And so you can get into a situation like that. And I'd say for me, I had a bit of like CPTSD for a little while after my ex, because I would definitely like fly off the handle and things like that. I'm definitely the more time I was have been away from my ex and not having his his, words in my head, the better that I feel. So I think for stuff like that, it takes time to heal, where there are soldiers out there who never get over like the war. They always have that PTSD where they will have like something that will like put them back in the war. Their brain will just automatically go back into the war. So it all depends on the situation that you're in. Some people don't want to say like what you have is PTSD, but it is a form of PTSD. If you deal with like domestic abuse situations, mental abuse, things like that, you can have a form of PTSD. So for her, I definitely think she had a bit of that because she was remembering how she ended up finding her fiance. And so it's really sad. It was kind of more of a sad story than it was happy. But I did like the fact that Decker was really patient with her, and her telling like what happened with her ex and all of the stuff that went down, and her feeling the sense of guilt, and even like his mother, her ex-fiance's mother, had to tell her it wasn't your fault. When it comes to somebody self-deleting, you cannot blame anybody for this person's self-deleting. They chose to do that. That was an act that they decided to do on their own. So, you cannot blame bullying or anything else. Bullying could have been the catalyst to finally, say, I'm done, because there are situations where like somebody's bullied, things like that, and they try to harm themselves. They've always had like mental health issues. They could have been the catalyst that finally was their jumping off point kind of thing. It was kind of like, I guess you could essentially say it was the final nail in the coffin for them. But there are people that, do end up self-deleting or attempting to self-delete, and they regret it, and some people end up like surviving, self-deleting. But this one here obviously didn't survive. So for her, it was like, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that he had done it to himself, because it was something he did to himself. You can't blame yourself. He ultimately needed to be the one to go to therapy, to, if he needed medication, take medication, things like that. You have to be the one to go to those places. You can't be embarrassed by it or feel ashamed by it. You need to go and do that for yourself, for your health, in order for you to feel better. Because what's happening to you right now doesn't mean it's going to happen to you forever. The feelings you have at this moment doesn't mean that you're going to feel that way tomorrow or a week from now or a month from now. This is why I say like therapy, and if you need to take medication, take that medication. If it's going to help you feel better, help you feel happier, that's what you want. And so for her, I think she tried her best. She tried her best helping him, and he wasn't willing to accept that help, wasn't willing to get the therapy and all of that stuff. It really was sad. It was a sad story. So for being a novella, it was really emotional. And I was just like, I wasn't really a super fan of it. I'd say I'd probably give it like a 3 if I was just gonna, rate that one alone. So the second story I liked better. This one was Ian and Quinn. So Ian is a coach, and so he keeps like seeing this woman, Quinn, that's around, and she's an athlete. She used to do running. She still does it, but she has to do it with a prosthetic because she ended up getting an injury where it caused blood flow to like stop flowing to like, I think, her knee area. And leg injuries can be very dangerous because you do have a really big nerve that goes down your leg. And so if you lose blood flow in certain areas of your leg, you could end up getting like atrophy to your leg, to where it could, like, you could like die if you don't go and get it amputated. So she ended up getting her leg amputated. I think that might have been above the knee. And so for her, she had to wear prosthetic. And so for her, it's like she obviously was feeling down for a while. And, you know, getting injured to where you lose a limb, it can be very, you know, defeating. It can be very defeating because you're like, I'm not the same person as I was. I'm missing a limb now. And so you could feel bad about yourself because, you know, there are men out there who don't want to date a woman who has a prosthetic or is possibly disabled, things like that. There are men out there who don't want to date a woman like that. And it's just, you know, it's very shallow, very sad. There are women out there too who do the same thing. They don't want to date a man who's disabled or possibly, you know, has a prosthetic. I don't let that bother me. You know, I would say if something happened to where like my husband got injured or something like that and he lost a limb, it's like, don't let that stop you from living your life. Just because you lost this piece of your body doesn't mean that your life is over. You could still continue on with your life. And maybe it leads you to like a different purpose for yourself. Maybe it'll lead you to where it's like you can give encouragement to other people who have, you know, are missing limbs, things like that. And then the technology has been like getting like so much better when it comes to prosthetics and things like that. I think the technology is really fascinating to me. I think it's really cool, especially like when it comes to like some of the prosthetics that runners wear. It's like almost kind of like a circular shape type of thing where it gives them like this bounce in their step. Really cool. If you look at like prosthetics, they're really interesting. So I would say like, I'm definitely not that type of shallow person where it's like, I'm not going to stop myself from dating somebody who has a prosthetic. I'd be like, oh, let me check out these prosthetics. This is really cool. You know, I'm like into like that stuff. I think it's really interesting. I look at it as like an artistic aspect to it. And it's like, yeah, that's, you know, I feel bad for the people who do have like phantom pain where it's like you feel like you still have that limb, but it causes you pain because it's like your brain just can't process the fact that you don't have that limb anymore. So that sucks, you know, for people who have that. But with Ian, he looked at her like, yeah, she's missing a limb, but it's like, it doesn't matter because I think she's beautiful and she's like great. I think she's fantastic of a person. So he pursued her. And I really like that about Ian because I'm like, yes, pursue her, man. She's already like, she's trying to feel confident in herself. She's trying to feel good about herself. And the fact that she is missing this, you know, this missing part of her leg and, you know, feeling very insecure in the fact that there's some men who don't want to date a woman like that. So I did like that he was very much pursuing her and it was really sweet. It was a really sweet story. I really enjoyed that one. I will say I like stories where like either the hero or the heroine has something like either it's like, you know, some type of disability or possibly like a disability where maybe they're missing a limb or something like that. I kind of like those stories. And I'm like, I think they're really sweet because it's like, overlook the fact of like, you have shallowness. It's like, you know, there are women out there. Well, I say I have a shallow trait for myself where I don't think I could date a guy who's like so much shorter than me, you know, and that is shallow. That is a shallow look. When you look at things, you're like, there are women out there some women who don't care. They're like, okay, I don't care. I'll date the guy who, you know, is a little bit shorter than me. But for me, I'm like, I prefer a guy to either be the same height as me or taller. That's just me. That's what I'm attracted to. And it is a shallow trait, you know. There's some men out there I don't want to give a chance to because they're shorter than me, you know. So that is a shallow trait I have to admit that I have of myself. But I did really like that story. I thought it was really cute. And I did like the fact that he was so persistent. Like, you know, I want to date you. But it wasn't in a creepy way and it wasn't in a forceful way. You know, he gave her boundaries, you know, and just let her, you know, make up her own mind. So I did like that one right there. So this one here, I don't think I'm going to like this series. I don't think I'm a fan of this series. I will read something else from this author that is not this serious, just to see if maybe if it's the author or what. I try to give authors second and third chances, and if they don't work for me, they just don't work for me. And and it's sad that they don't, because this is a popular author on BookTube, but just didn't work for me. So I ended up reading Eyes on Me by Sarah Kate. This is a part of the Salacious Players Club, book number 2. So I gave this a 3. So this was Mia and Garrett. I gave this a 4 out of 5 for spice, because this was very spicy, very sexy times and all that stuff. So I said there was kinks, and the kinks in here were anal play, BDSM, there was voyeur, he was a voyeur, and there were scenes with them where there was more than one person watching and all that stuff. She very much was, what was the term again? He was a voyeur, but she was wasn't an exhibitionist? I think that's what it's called. An exhibitionist. Where it's like they like people watching them. They get off on that. Personally, for me, I like my privacy. I'm more of a voyeur. I'd say if I was anything, I'd be more of a voyeur, where I'm like, I'd watch somebody, but I don't like people watching me. I like my privacy. I don't want people like invading my space, So I said this was okay, but there were things that didn't work for me. There was plenty of spice, but something was lacking for me to form any connection to the characters. Like the one thing that kind of creeped me out was the one thing that kind of creeped me out about this story was the fact that I do like stepbrother and stepsister romances, because that's what they were in this book, is they were step siblings. I actually like that. I actually like the step sibling trope, but there is a difference. If they're around the same age, can totally get into that. But this one here, when their parents, I can't remember who it was. I think it was his mother, her father. I think that's what it was. When they got married, Mia was 8. She was 8. And what was his name again? Garrett? Garrett was 21. So when they get together, Mia, he's grown up like seeing her, grown up seeing her mature into a young lady, a young adult and all that stuff. So she's like 23 when he starts like hooking up with her, and he's 36. I would say, like, if the parents had gotten married at that time, like say if the parents just got married and she was 23 and he was 36, I wouldn't mind it. But for the fact that they grew up a bit around each other and he thought she was an annoying little troll, it was kind of creepy. It had like a creepy factor to it I wasn't a fan of. And when they started getting like intimate, I was kind of like, do I like this? I don't think I really like this. I don't think I'm really a fan of this. Because it's like, you almost have like a mentor aspect to when it comes to like, when someone's so much smaller than you, like for me, I used to babysit some kids that were not that much older than me. Like when I was about, a teenager, maybe I would babysit a kid that was like 10 or 9 or 8, things like that. Nowadays, it's like, yeah, we will both be adults, but still, I'm like, I still would look at this person like they're still a kid to me. They're still like a little brother to me. So I couldn't be sexually attracted to this person because it'd be too creepy. Like, I would say like there's somebody I knew that was like around 16, and I knew them, and I was like, he's really cute. He's really cute. But I'm like, oh my God, I am a creeper looking at this young boy thinking he's really attractive. He's 16. It's like, no, it's like, your brain almost kind of like reverts back to like being a 16-year-old. And I think that's what it is with some females, and why you end up seeing some female women getting involved with these sexual relationships with these underage boys. That's what I think it is. It's the women their minds revert back to being a teenager, and they're like, oh, well, I never had a boy pay attention to me when I was a teenager, and this boy who's 16 is paying attention to me, you know? And I had to look at it like, that's creepy to me. And I'm like, that's very creepy. So I'm like, ooh, you know, I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. It just makes me feel like a chomo, you know? Ugh. I'm like, I don't like that. I just don't like that. It's very creepy. And I think, you know, you need to like not go to that part, you know? It's very creepy. And I think there's very much a bias when it comes to a hypocrisy, where you'll see like older men getting involved with these younger women, and it'll be like, oh, you're an old creepo. But then when you see an older woman getting involved with this really young guy, and they're like, everybody thinks it's okay. And I'm like, no, double standards here. I don't like seeing a much older woman being with a way younger guy, especially if the guy's underage. Because I'm like, no, that's creepy. That's just creepy. You're taking advantage of this guy, and you're like manipulating him. You're like mentally manipulating him. So for me, I was like, for this one here, it just felt like the guy would be more of a mentor because he was an adult. He was 21 when she was 8. So I was kind of feeling like he took advantage of her. Like, she's 23. What does a fucking 23-year-old know? You know, they're still dumb. Girls are still stupid at 23. I know, because when I was in my 20s, I thought I was smart and, you know, oh, I know everything. Now that I'm in my 40s, I didn't know shit about being in my 20s, okay? You grow up, you mature, you realize what you like. So that's what, for me, I ultimately gave it like a 3. It was the age gap of like, they started out with like her being like a little girl, and I'm just like, ugh. It was creepy. And then also, I did not like the fact that the author kind of like pushed this mental illness to him in the book. All of a sudden, it's like this dude's got bipolar disorder, and I'm like, where did this come from? You know? All of a sudden, it's like this guy has like severe depression. And it's like, okay, dude, you need therapy. Go to therapy. Talk to somebody who knows about this stuff. Why do you go and just let this linger and you get into these funks when you could have someone who's professional, who knows this type of stuff, help you? And you possibly get some kind of medication. So to me, I kind of felt like this was put in as like a plot device. And I'm just like, ugh. I hate that. I don't want authors putting in mental illness as a plot device. I have a mental illness. That is disgusting. I don't like that. So for me, this book didn't work for me. Unfortunately, it did not. If other people like it, that's awesome. But for me, it just did not work, because I was like, is this put in as like a plot device? That's shady. So I don't like that. So the next book I read, I loved this. I loved this book. I have this on my Kindle. I love this so much, I wanted to buy a physical copy of it. So I ended up buying Stacy Reid, This Is a Matter of Temptation. This was a 5-star for me. I love this book. This was great. So this one here we have is Wilhelmina Crawford. Her name, she goes by Mina. And we have him, he's Simon Lofton. He's the Earl of Creswick. So I gave this a 4 out of 5. It was pretty good spice in here. It was good sexy times. So I said I was very impressed with this story. I said this is definitely a favorite read of mine for the year. I think definitely for the year, this is going to be a favorite of mine for the year, is that one. It was good. I really liked this one. So I love the fact that Mina went to help her brother, and she was disguised as a man, because her and her brother are basically by themselves. Their parents had passed away, and it basically, their parents left them destitute. So the brother was trying his best to, like pay off debts and things like that. and he was having a hard time. So he ended up gambling, and unfortunately, he was cheating. Somebody caught him in cheating, and they were like accusing him of it, and he basically accused this other person of doing it. And so it caused him to say, I'm gonna, we're gonna do a duel. I need to like, and he needs to obviously defend his honor and all that stuff. And so he ends up saying, I'm gonna duel Simon, who's really good at like swordplay. And he ends up telling his sister, and his sister's like, why? She's like, why did you do this? She's like, you're not very good at doing swordplay. I could do better than you. So he's just like, I know, kind of basically saying like, I fucked up, like I fucked up, man. And so, she ends up, her and the maid end up giving the brother some type of like sleeping drought that ends up putting him to sleep. So she decides to go in her brother's place and fight in this duel. So she ends up winning the match. And I was like, good for you, girl. So I did like that. And it didn't feel like heavy-handed to me. Like there are times when an author will want to like make a heroine more progressive to where she's very like self-sufficient, things like that, or very strong-willed. And sometimes they make the character so strong-willed that they make the heroine look weak. This did not have that. I did not feel that at all with this here, where she was a very strong female character, but she did have vulnerabilities. She definitely had some vulnerabilities, and that's what I liked about this one here. And so with Simon, he liked her so much and was impressed by what she did, because he ended up discovering she was a woman, just by like, I guess her lips and stuff like that, at the bottom of her face. He started getting like a stirring in his loins, I guess you'd say. And he was like, wait a minute, she's a female, And so he ends up like, hey, come into my office. We're going to talk. And so he ends up hiring her as his secretary. And so I'm like, very forward thinking, dude. I like that. So they start working together because he is like, I guess you could say he's like a politician, where he's working on these like bills to make it to where, what was it again? Yeah, he wants to pass a reform bill that he's been championing for years to secure the vote for England's most vulnerable constituents. So he wants to reform this bill to where it makes the working class be able to vote. So he wants to be able to do that. And then obviously he wants to work with like making things better for like women's rights and all that stuff. So it was more of I'd say a progressive type of book, but it wasn't like, it didn't force feed it to you. Like it didn't push it down your throat. Like there's some books out there where I feel like they kind of shove it down your throat and you're like, I don't like this. It doesn't feel natural, where this felt very natural to me. I like the way Stacey Reid wrote this to where it did feel like it's pushing you in the right direction when it comes to progressive thinking, when it comes to like women's rights to vote, women having the right to land and having the right to like things like that. Because back in that time, it's like they didn't have the right to like divorce. It was a mark on the wife. It wasn't a mark on the man. So very obviously not equal when it comes to women. So she has a secret in this book that I'm not going to spoil, but she's got a secret in this book that she doesn't want to let Simon know. So throughout this book, she's like, trying to hold in the secret and ends up getting exposed. And the thing I really liked about Simon was that he was shocked at first, but then he asked her, explain it to me, So once she explained it to him, he didn't fault her of why she didn't say anything, and he didn't fault her for the situation, and so I really liked that too. And the other thing I liked about Simon is that he was very much like, I'd say, a workaholic, where he wanted to he worked very hard. He wasn't really much of a socialized person. He would do his socializing when it comes to situations like when it was something that he had to kind of do, but he wasn't really the type of person where he liked to socialize all that much. He very much liked to be at home and just continue to do his work and all that stuff. And then when it came to like situations where maybe he was like being sexual with a woman, it was more of like a process to be done. It wasn't like, he didn't really find any enjoyment out of it, I guess you'd say. It was more of like, it kind of scratched an itch for him. So when he started to hang out with Mina more often, he realized he was attracted to her, and it's something that he really never felt for any other woman. So even as a child, like, he wasn't really affectionate and things like that. And she really brought that out in him. And that's what I really liked about this book, is that she brought out so much like feeling for him, like feelings and affection and things like that. And I really liked that. You know, I really liked that. And it's almost like, kind of like the Grinch, where it's like the Grinch's heart like expanded 2 sizes, you know, because he found someone to have feeling for. And I really loved this one. This was really good, and definitely 5 stars for me. Really enjoyable. And I will say, like, I read another Stacy Reid book before, and I wasn't really a fan of it, but I definitely want to read more from her, because I really enjoyed this book. I'm hoping that the other 2 books that I have from her, that I'll really enjoy those ones as well. But yeah, this one was really well done. I liked the characters a lot. Like I said, she was very, like, you know, strong-willed when it came to things, but she also showed her vulnerability. And then he started to, like, you know, he was like a block, you know, he was like a brick wall, and then she kind of like was crumbling him, you know, to where he'd show more, you know, feeling and stuff like that. And I really liked that one. So yeah, definitely 5 stars for me. Love this one. This was really good. And I'm putting in my little markers right now. So right now I'm like halfway through of like putting my little marks in of all my favorite spots of this. But yeah, really, really good. I enjoyed that one a lot. Definitely a favorite read for the month of January. And probably a favorite read for the year. So this next one, I will just preface it. I'm not doing this to offend anybody. These are my views. These are my thoughts. No offense to anybody. If you are offended by this video, give it a thumbs down. I don't care. But these are my thoughts on this book here. So I ended up reading Preservation by Ashley Mack. Now, this book here is a novella. There were some things in it that I kind of had issues with. So they got the characters of Jerome. He goes by Rome. He doesn't like the name Jerome. And Cynthia. She goes by Sin. And so I said, so glad the author shortened the name, because the heroine's name is the same name as my mother's. And I would be creeped out if the hero was moaning Cindy. I'd be like, because that's my mom's name. So I would be creeped out if he was like moaning that name. So, no. So, la, you know, so, the first book in this series was a winner chicken dinner for me. I said, this one here unfortunately didn't work for me. So I said, I'm not a huge fan of the dominant submissive relationship. So the intimacy was fine in here, but the heroine annoyed me. I said, she has a YouTube channel. I was rolling my eyes at that. I hate that type of trope where it's like, this person's got a YouTube channel. You know, oh, they're social media and all. I hate that. And other social media, she doesn't really care about it anymore. She's not really into it. So where her dad is a complete jerk and wants to live vicariously through his daughter by making her into a brand, where he handles her social media and like he does like just stupid stuff to like try to like wring like sympathy for her. And it's like, dude, why are you doing that, man? I said, I hate parents like that. So let your kids live their own lives, especially once they become adults. She's an adult. It's like, let her live, man. Stop living vicariously through her. You know, like, oh, well, she's got to have a certain image on social media. Oh, I hate that. I said, also, her dad wants her to marry a certain type of rich individual with a name. Like, obviously, he's got a title and all that stuff. And I'm like, man, are we in the 1800s? We're really doing this? Okay, you know. So Rome, on the other hand, had a huge chip on his shoulder from his ex and what she did to him, which I can understand, you know. And his roommate is his best friend, and the person is called Dell, who's non-binary, and they like to go by the pronouns they, them. So I said they switch between more feminine clothing and hairstyles to more masculine clothing in here. So I guess it depends on their mood. I will say that I do not understand all of these pronouns. I said, and I don't care what you call yourself, but it confuses me in the written word when an author states that they were by the kitchen. I said, I had to keep remembering that the character Rome was referring to Dell. I said, I guess if I was in a real life scenario and someone goes by that pronoun, I might be able to identify who the person is. But in the written format, it gets confusing in my opinion. Like, especially when you say they, I'm thinking more than one, because they, them, in the written word means more than one. So when you go and have the pronoun where you're like, well, I don't want to have a binary. I don't want to go and say that I'm a male or I'm a female, because one day maybe you be more masculine and then one day you're more feminine. And it's like, you can be masculine as a female and still be considered a female, you know? Like, same thing with a male. A male may have more feminine traits. It doesn't mean that he wants to be a woman. So, you know? So I said, also the author says the college they go to is pretty woke, you know? So if you aren't a fan of wokeness or pronouns, you probably won't like this novella. I said, I would say this novella will only appeal to a certain demographic of people who frequently use those terms. I don't frequently use those terms, you know? So I said, for me, I would say I'm more, if you want to define me as anything, I'm more of a nonconformist, you know, if you want to go and give me a term. I said, I don't believe in labeling individuals because you end up putting people into boxes, and that feels more regressive to me than progressive. And I said, but I grew up in the 90s and I'm a Gen X person, so none of these terms really appeal to me, you know? I said, I don't care what you call yourself because it's your life. I believe in respecting each other as people and respecting each other's boundaries. I said, if I'm by someone conversing and they want me to call them by a certain pronoun or name, then I will respect the person and just go by that name or pronoun. I said, I just don't want it to be forced on me. I said, if you want respect, then I deserve respect, you know? And so overall story was okay until the 50% mark. Then I felt like it got boring and dragged on for me, which shouldn't be that way since it's a novella. So that's the biggest reason why I ended up giving it 3 stars. I said, I'm not sure if I want to continue on in the series. I'd rather check out the author's backlist and go from there. So this one here, it's like, it's definitely more, people say grumpy sunshine, and I'm like, if you want to put that term in, he is more of a grump, she is more of a sunshine, but I felt like she was fake sunshine. She wasn't real sunshine. You know, there are people who are automatically happy people. I actually like to be around happy people. Me being more of a grump, you know, I like to be around people who are more positive and happy, and that's their default. That's what they like. They like to be happy. They don't fake it to make it kind of thing, you know, where with her, I felt like she was more of like faking it, trying to be happy because she wasn't happy in her situation when it came to her father and all this stuff that he demanded of her and all that stuff. I just felt like it was forced, more of a forced sunshine for her, to where he was only a grump because he likes, you know, he's more of an introvert. He likes to be by himself most of the time. And his friend, Dell, is like the closest friend he has, you know. So for me, it was like, it's not really grumpy sunshine. It's definitely more of a dominant submissive. She likes, from her submitting to her father all the time and his demands, it's made her more of a people pleaser where she likes to please people. So she's more submissive, and he realized he's definitely more dominant, you know, being around her, where he wants to like do things to her and all that stuff. That I'm okay with if that's the type of relationship you want to have. But like I said, when it comes to like them saying grumpy sunshine, and I'm like, I wouldn't necessarily say that. You know, I felt like she was being fake when it came to that. And so that's why I really just wasn't a fan of the heroine. I felt she was very much a weak character, you know. And then, like I said, when it came to the character of Dell, you know, for me, like I said, I don't care what you want to call yourself with your name, with your pronouns, whatever have you. But when you write they, them in a book, it confuses me because it's in written word. When it's in written word, it's a different format to saying like they are over there. You know, like if I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, well, this person's non-binary, they go by they, them. And once you explain that to this person, they're going to be like, okay, that person's over there. You know, I would say person. Most times I'd be like this person, this individual, because that's what they are. They're an individual. They are a person. You know, I probably wouldn't use the terms they, them most of the time. I'd say this individual, or I'd say, oh, Dell's over there. You know, I'd call them either by their names, or I would say this person, this individual, because it gets confusing when you do they, them. Like I said, I understand why people have pronouns. If that's what makes you feel better is having this pronoun about yourself, I don't care. It's none of my business. If that's the way you want to live your life, that's up to you. For me, I'm more, like I said, I'm more of a nonconformist. I don't like labels. So when people go and label me a certain way, I hate that. I'm like, please do not do that. Like there's a term cisgender. I don't like that term. Do not call me that. And you know, and people try to explain it to me and it's like, look, I understand the definition, okay? That is a term I never grown up with. I've only recently heard that term. I don't want to be called that. Can you please not call me that? That's the respect I ask for. If you want to be called Susan and she, her, I have no problem with that. I will call you Susan and she, her. But please do not call me cisgender. You know, my name is Brandy. That's what I want to be called. You know, do I look like a female? Then I'm a female. That's what I look like. That's what I am. I'm a female. So I just, you know, people get kind of like fight back and forth with each other. And it's like, can we just stop? Stop doing this. You know, so whatever you want to call yourself, I will call you that as respect. So I deserve respect back, and do not label me with terms I never asked for. That's all I ask for. So with this one here, it's like, I understand the author wants to be a little bit more progressive, wants to be a little bit more, more in today's times and stuff like that. But also there's going to be people who hate those terms and are going to not like this book. You know, they're not going to like this book. They're not going to like the terms being told. They're not going to like the non-binary and whatever other terms you want to use for yourselves. They're not going to like that. People are just not. So it's like this here, it's like it's targeted to a certain demographic of people. And there's going to be plenty of others who are not going to give this a good rating. Or they're going to DNF it. And there's going to be a lot of people who don't want to review this because they do not want to be canceled, or they don't want to have like a mob come after them and say like you're being an ist or a phobe or whatever it is. I'm neither one of those things. You know, like I said, you respect me, I respect you back. If you disrespect me, you do not deserve respect either. So for me, with this book, it just didn't work for me. And it wasn't just the non-binary thing, and it wasn't like the pronouns and all that stuff. I can kind of get over that. It was the whole story of like, didn't like that she lacked any kind of a backbone, and just the whole labeling of it was confusing, where it's like, it's not really Grumpy Sunshine since she's kind of being fake Sunshine. And then, like I said, the wording when it came to like the they, them, it's confusing reading it, you know, it's not something I'm used to reading. So, that's not really stuff that I would go for, you know, like if I knew that that would be confusing to me, I probably wouldn't have read it. I would have just skipped it, you know? And it's going to confuse other people too. You're going to be like, what does this mean? You know, especially with people who aren't in, when it comes to like knowing all that stuff, There are plenty of people out there who are going to be like, what now? What's this pronoun thing? They're not going to know that. They're not going to be in the know of all that stuff. Like, I try to keep track of, like, you know, stuff like that. But there's plenty of other people who are not going to know that, who are going to be, they're going to be like, oh, this book is confusing to me. So that's what all I'm saying is that if you want to be an author, you need to be able to write a book that is going to be a demographic of a bigger population of people. You know, you're only going to get a certain amount of people who are going to be like, yes, queen, kind of thing. You're going to be a certain amount of people who are going to do that and praise this book. There's going to be other people who are going to be like, I fucking hated this. So yeah, it all depends on, you know, your preferences and what you like to read and don't like to read in books. So that's why I kind of give the warning, like, that's what's in this book. So if you're not interested in reading that, you'd probably be better off skipping this than, you know, reading it. But if you do like that type of thing, if you like pronouns and you like, you know, all of that stuff, then this would be probably the book for you. You'd probably really dig this. But for me, I was kind of like in the middle where I'm like, there were things I liked about the story, and then there were things that I just wasn't a fan of. And ultimately, I really just didn't have a great time when it came to, like, it seemed like it stretched too long for being a novella. And also, it just got kind of boring to me, you know? And it's like, it really needed to, like, something else to kind of pick up the pace for it. So yeah, ultimately that's why I gave it a 3, because it wasn't like a completely enjoyable experience. So there were parts that I was kind of skimming through, you know? I was kind of skimming through that I just didn't care, you know? But yeah, that's it for this video here. This is a long review, but I needed to kind of like get all that stuff out. And if anybody's offended, I'm sorry. I'm not doing that to offend anybody. I'm just stating, you know, my opinions. If nobody likes my opinions, you know, you could take it up with me in DMs or in my comment section. Either way, you know, I'm going to speak my opinions. And there's a lot of people out there who walking on eggshells, who don't want to say anything to offend people. You know what? We don't live in a fantasy world. We live in reality. You're going to get offended by something. You need to deal with your own emotional, you know, well-being. So yeah, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I will see you all in the next video. All right. Bye.